Let me tell you about a moment that I think a lot of English learners have experienced, even if they've never put words to it. You're in a conversation. Things are going fine. And then something unexpected happens in the story someone is telling. Something surprising. Something that genuinely catches you off guard. And the person you're talking with reacts. And their reaction is fast. It's instinctive. It's emotional. And it comes out in English. And here's the thing. You understood every word they said before that moment. But the reaction, those few words or sounds that shot out of them, flew past you so quickly and sounded so different from normal speech that you weren't quite sure what just happened. Did they say, "No way"? Did they say, "Are you serious"? Did they say, "Get out of here"? And you heard it, but you weren't completely sure what it meant, or how strong a reaction it was, or whether you were supposed to react to, or whether the moment passed before you could respond. And the conversation moved on, and you were half a beat behind, trying to catch up with something that was already gone. If that's happened to you, and I think it probably has, then today is your day. Because today, we are going to talk about one of the most emotionally rich, most instinctive, most fast-moving parts of spoken English. We are going to talk about how English speakers express surprise, the words, the sounds, the phrases, the patterns that shoot out of people when something catches them off guard. And by the end of today, you will never be half a beat behind a surprise reaction again. Welcome back. I'm Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the channel that takes the real, living, fully emotional English language and helps you understand it the way it actually works. Not polished, not slowed down, not simplified beyond recognition. Real English, with all its speed and warmth and expressiveness and surprise. And surprise. Real surprise. The kind that comes out of people before they've had time to think about how to phrase it, is one of the most authentic and most revealing forms of emotional expression in English conversation. Learning to catch it, understand it, and respond to it is going to make you a fundamentally better and more connected English listener. Today we are going to follow a man named Soren. Soren is 30 years old. He works at a small architecture firm. He has been learning and using English in professional and social contexts for about 5 years, and he is good. His English is genuinely strong. He reads well, writes clearly, presents with confidence. But he has a gap that he became aware of about 6 months ago. Emotional reactions in English, especially surprise, move too fast for him. Not the words themselves, the rhythm, the intensity, the layering. Native speakers, when something catches them off guard, sometimes produce several surprise expressions in a row, overlapping, building on each other. Wait, what? Are you serious? No, I can't believe it. How? And Soren hears those words, but doesn't always catch what each one is doing. Which expression is the peak of the reaction? What the reaction is telling him about how the other person feels. He hears the sound of surprise without always reading its shape. Soren's closest friend outside work is a woman named Lena. Lena is 28, originally from a different country, but completely at home in English, and she is one of the most expressively reactive people Soren has ever met. Her surprises are vivid, colorful, immediate. She doesn't modulate her reactions. They come out whole and loud and fast. Being around Lena has been, for Soren, an immersion course in emotional English that no classroom could have provided. There's also a character named Tom. Tom is a colleague at the architecture firm. 34, dry, understated, and English in a very specific cultural way. His surprise expressions are the opposite of Lena's. They're quiet, minimal, sometimes almost ironic. A raised eyebrow and a slow "really" from Tom can mean exactly the same thing as Lena's "oh my God, you're joking." They're the same reaction, genuine surprise, expressed through completely different emotional registers. And understanding both ends of the spectrum and everything in between is what gives Soren the full picture. And finally, there's a client named Adriana. Adriana is the lead on a big commercial project that Soren's firm is working on. She's 43, Brazilian-born, but has been working in English for 20 years, and her surprise expressions are professional, carefully managed, never excessive, but real. When something genuinely surprises her, she expresses it cleanly, economically, clearly. And her expressions of surprise in a professional context have taught Soren a lot about how emotional reactions function in workplace English, where the same genuine feeling gets expressed through a slightly different filter. Okay, let's begin. It's a Tuesday evening. Soren and Lena are at a pub near Soren's flat. They've been there for about an hour. Lena has been telling Soren about something that happened to a mutual friend of theirs. A friend named Carl who, apparently, has just quit his job, sold his apartment, and announced that he's moving to a small island to start a fish farm. This is not a thing anyone expected Carl to do. Carl is an accountant. Carl has never, to anyone's knowledge, shown any interest in fish farming, or islands, or farms of any kind. Lena is telling this story with the energy it deserves, and Soren is following along, and when she gets to the fish farm part, Soren hears himself say something he didn't plan. Wait, what? Just those two words. He didn't compose them. They came out on their own, instinctively, before his brain had time to formulate a more considered response. And Lena laughs and says, I know. And the two of them sit with the sheer unexpectedness of Carl and his fish farm for a moment. And afterward, walking home, thinking about the conversation, Soren realizes something. Wait, what? Was perfect. It was exactly the right response. And he produced it naturally, without thinking, because the surprise was real. And he thinks, when the emotion is real, the language comes. The problem isn't producing surprise expressions. The problem is hearing them when others produce them, catching them in the wild, understanding what each one means, knowing how to respond. Let's start with what happened in that moment and use it as our entry point into the world of surprise expressions in English. Because, wait, what? Is a great example to start with. It's one of the most common spontaneous surprise expressions in conversational English, and it does something very specific. The wait is a pause signal. It says, stop, hold on. I need a moment to process what I just heard. The what is a disbelief signal. It says, I heard those words, but I cannot quite make them fit with my existing picture of the world. Together, wait, what? Means, what you just said has disrupted my understanding, and I need you to confirm that I heard it correctly. It's a surprise expression that immediately asks for repetition or confirmation, even if it doesn't use the words, can you repeat that? The question is implicit in the tone. Now, let's go through the landscape of surprise expressions in English systematically, because it's wide and varied and rich, and knowing it well is going to change how you experience emotional English completely. The first family is the disbelief expression. These are surprise expressions that specifically signal that the speaker cannot immediately accept what they've heard as true. They heard it, they understood it, but some part of them is resisting it. You're joking. You're kidding. No way. That can't be right. I don't believe it. Are you serious? Seriously? You're not serious. No. Just no. A single flat no, said not as a refusal, but as a reaction to something that feels impossible. These expressions say, "What you just told me doesn't fit with my model of reality. Please confirm or deny." Lena uses these constantly. When Carl's fish farm came up, her first reaction was, "No way," followed immediately by, "You're joking." Two disbelief expressions back to back, each one doing the same job but slightly differently. "No way" coming first, as the instinctive gut reaction, "You're joking" following, as a slightly more directed, slightly more requesting expression that specifically invited Soren to tell her it wasn't true. The sequence told Soren exactly how surprised Lena was. Not just surprised, genuinely disbelieving. The second family is the magnitude expression. These are expressions that signal not just surprise, but the scale of the surprise. How far outside normal expectations the new information is. I had no idea. I can't believe it. That's unbelievable. That's incredible. That's extraordinary. Of all the things, I never would have guessed. That's the last thing I expected. These expressions communicate not just that something is surprising, but that it is highly, significantly, maybe even historically surprising. That it sets a new record for unexpectedness in the speaker's experience. Tom, who uses expressions sparingly, tends to reach for magnitude expressions when something genuinely floors him. Soren has seen him say, "That is extraordinary," with perfect quietness and perfect conviction. No raised voice, no dramatic intonation, and yet the effect is somehow more powerful than if he'd shouted it. Because coming from Tom, extraordinary is not light praise. It's a calibrated assessment, and the rarity of his strong expressions is what makes them count. The third family is the curiosity surprise. This is when surprise and curiosity arrive together. When something unexpected triggers not just, "I can't believe it," but "I need to understand this." Expressions like, "How is that possible?" "What on earth happened?" "How did that come about?" "What led to that?" "Where did that come from?" "How did you end up there?" These expressions show that the surprise has flipped immediately into wanting more information. The speaker is surprised and wants to understand the surprising thing. They're not just reacting, they're beginning to investigate. Soren, it turns out, uses curiosity surprise expressions a lot. It's naturally how his mind works. When something surprises him, his first instinct is not, "I can't believe it," but "how?" or "why?" He wants to understand the mechanism behind the surprising thing. And understanding this about himself helps him also hear it in others. Because when he hears someone say, "How did that happen?" in response to something surprising, he recognizes it as his own instinct, the same intellectual curiosity wrapped in a different situation. The fourth family is the exclamatory surprise. These are the short, high-energy bursts of expression that come out of people when surprise hits fast and hits hard. "Oh my God!" "Oh wow!" "Oh gosh!" "Oh my!" "Wow!" "Whoa!" "Good grief!" "Good Lord!" "My goodness!" "Goodness me!" "Crikey!" "Blimey!" The level of energy in these expressions tells you a lot. "Oh," on its own, said with a quick rising pitch, is mild surprise. "Oh, wow," is stronger. "Oh my God" is stronger still. Though importantly, in casual English, "oh my God" is used constantly for things that are not actually shocking. It can just mean, "I'm enthusiastic about this," which makes it important to read the context. "Whoa" is almost always genuine. It comes out before the speaker has had time to modulate, and it signals real, instinctive, physical feeling surprise. Crikey and blimey are British and slightly older in register, but still used, particularly by Tom, who manages to make them sound completely natural. The fifth family is the soft surprise. This is the quieter end of the spectrum. The expressions used when something is somewhat unexpected, but not dramatically so. When someone is mildly surprised rather than floored. "Oh, really? Oh, is that right? That's interesting. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have thought so. That's unexpected. Oh, I see." These expressions are often said with a slightly rising pitch at the end. A gentle, questioning surprise rather than a sharp, reactive one. They're saying, "This is slightly new information for me. It's updating my picture a little, but I'm not knocked sideways." Tom operates heavily in the soft surprise register. When something mildly unexpected comes up, he will say, "Oh, is that right?" with a measured, thoughtful tone. The surprise is present, it's genuine, but it's controlled. It doesn't burst out. It moves through him at a slower speed and comes out at a calmer temperature. And recognizing this register, understanding that, "oh, is that right?" from someone like Tom carries more genuine surprise than it might appear, is one of the more nuanced listening skills Soren has been building. The sixth family is the empathetic surprise. These are expressions used when the surprising thing happened to someone else, and the speaker's surprise is partly on behalf of that person. "Oh, you poor thing. That must have been such a shock. I can imagine how you felt." "Oh, I can't imagine. You must have been floored. I bet that came out of nowhere." These expressions do double work. They signal the speaker's own surprise, and they simultaneously express empathy for the person who experienced the surprising event. They're not just, "I'm surprised," but "I'm surprised, and I care about the impact this had on you." Lena uses empathetic surprise expressions all the time, and they're one of the things that make her such a warm conversational partner. She doesn't just react to surprising information. She reacts to the person who had to live through it. And that combination, surprise plus care, is deeply connecting. It says, "I'm not just processing this as information. I'm thinking about you in it." Let's go back to the story. It's now Thursday. Soren is at the architecture firm, and he's in a meeting with Tom and Adriana and a couple of others. They're reviewing progress on the commercial project. Things have been going well. The meeting is productive. And then Adriana says, fairly calmly, that there is a change to the brief. The client, the end user, the actual company that will occupy the building, has decided they want to increase the floor space by 15%. 15%. At this stage of the project, there's a brief silence in the room. Tom looks at his notes, and then he says quietly, "That's a significant change at this stage." His voice is level. His face is almost expressionless. But Soren, who has been around Tom for 2 years, hears the surprise in significant. It's not a neutral word from Tom. It's carrying weight. It means, "This is much larger than I expected, and I have questions about whether it's even manageable without substantial rework." Adriana nods. She says, "I know. I was surprised, too, when they told me." That phrase, I was surprised too, is honest and human and slightly vulnerable. She's not pretending it's fine. She's acknowledging the disruption. And two includes herself in the surprise, connecting herself to the room. Someone else in the meeting, a junior colleague named Beth, says, "Oh, wow," under her breath. Instinctive, soft, but genuine. She'd been quiet until then. "Oh, wow," was the sound of her processing the information and not quite being able to stay silent about it. And Soren says, and he will think about this later as a moment of real progress. 15%. That changes the structural calculation significantly. He didn't say, "Oh, wow," or "Are you serious?" or "I can't believe it." He expressed his surprise in a way that was calibrated to the professional context. Not suppressing the surprise, the tone of his voice carried it, but expressing it through the implication of what the change means, rather than through a raw exclamation. In a professional meeting, that's often how surprise is most usefully expressed. Not, "I can't believe it," but "This means X," which carries the surprise and the seriousness of the consequence. After the meeting, Tom passes by Soren's desk. He says, without breaking stride, "Well, that was unexpected." 2 sentences. Quiet, dry, classic Tom. Well, a word that signals some kind of recalibration is happening, some emotional adjustment is being made. And that was unexpected. A simple declarative statement that would sound almost neutral if you didn't know Tom. But Soren knows Tom. And from Tom, "That was unexpected," is a strong statement. It's the equivalent of someone else saying, "I cannot believe they just did that." The understatement is itself an expression of surprise. The smaller Tom makes his language in the face of something large. The more you know it's large. This is something Soren has learned to hear, and I want to make sure you hear it too. Understatement as surprise expression. In British English especially, and in many professional and restrained personal registers, understatement is one of the primary tools of emotional expression. The greater the surprise, the smaller the words. Bit of a surprise, that. Not what we were expecting. Somewhat unexpected. I'd call that a development. These phrases, said with the right timing and the right quietness, can carry enormous emotional weight. The restraint is not the absence of feeling. The restraint is the form through which the feeling is being expressed. Tom is the master of this, and Soren has spent 2 years learning to read him. And now, when Tom says, "Well, that was unexpected," in a quiet voice while passing his desk, Soren hears, "This is going to require significant rethinking," and Tom is already working through what that means. The understatement tells him more than a loud, "I can't believe it," would have. Let's talk now about something that Lena and Soren discuss on Friday evening, because she asks him a question that opens something up in a useful way. They're having dinner again, this time at Soren's flat. And at some point Lena says, "Can I ask you something? When you're surprised in English, when something genuinely catches you off guard, what comes out? Like, naturally? Without thinking?" Soren thinks. Usually, "Wait, what?" or "How?" or sometimes just silence. Lena says, "Silence is an interesting one. What does the silence mean?" Soren says, "Processing time, I think. Like my brain is so busy updating that it has nothing left over for words." Lena says, "Yeah, silence is a surprise expression too. Just a very quiet one. And this is worth sitting with. Silence as surprise. The absence of words as a word. In English, a pause, a real pause, longer than normal, where speech would usually be expected, is often read as a strong emotional signal. It says, I'm so affected by what you just said that I'm still in it. I haven't moved on yet. I'm still processing. And depending on the context and the relationship, that pause can communicate as much or more than any exclamation. The pause before, well, the kind Tom uses, is a classic professional surprise signal. Well, with a pause before and after, is not filler. It's Tom's way of saying, I'm gathering myself because what just happened requires a moment. And the gathering is itself the signal. Let's talk about something practical now that comes up when Soren discusses this with Lena. And that's the question of how to respond to surprise expressions. Because hearing them is only half the skill. When someone expresses genuine surprise in a conversation with you, when something you've said produces "no way," or "I can't believe it," or a long pause and a quiet, well, how do you respond? What do you do with the surprise expression? Lena has a strong instinct about this. She says, the worst thing you can do is ignore it. Just keep talking over it like it didn't happen. Soren says, because? Lena says, because the surprise expression is real. It's the person telling you their inner state. And if you just keep talking, you're telling them their inner state doesn't matter. You missed it, or you dismissed it. Either way, it's not good. Soren says, so you pause? Lena says, you pause. You let them have the reaction. Sometimes you just say, I know, or I know, right? Or, yeah, I had the same reaction. And sometimes you ask them a question. What's going through your mind? Or, does that change anything for you? You meet them in the reaction rather than powering past it. This is incredibly useful, and I want to make sure it lands clearly. Meeting someone in their surprise, rather than powering past it, is a form of respect and connection. When someone says, no way, or goes quiet, or says, I can't believe it, they are momentarily off script. Their language is coming from a more vulnerable, more instinctive place than usual. And pausing to acknowledge that, to say, I know, or it surprised me too, or just to give them the silence they need, is the kind of responsive, emotionally intelligent conversation that makes people feel genuinely heard. Now let's go into our practice exercises, because you've been listening for a while, and it's time to give you tools. The first exercise is what I call Surprise Safari. For 1 week, every time you hear a surprise expression in English, in a conversation, in a film, in a podcast, in a TV show, note it. Which family does it belong to? Disbelief? Magnitude? Curiosity? Surprise? Exclamatory? Soft surprise? Empathetic surprise? How strong is the reaction? What does the expression tell you about the speaker's emotional state? Doing this exercise for just 1 week will make the landscape of English surprise expressions completely visible to you. Because they're everywhere. Once you're looking, you'll see them in almost every conversation. The second exercise is the register reading. This one is specifically about understanding that the same emotion, genuine surprise, can be expressed across a huge range of registers, from the very loud and expressive to the very quiet and understated. Take a single piece of surprising news and practice expressing surprise about it in 3 different registers. In Lena's register, in Tom's register, and in Adriana's register. Loud and expressive, quiet and understated, professional and measured. How does each feel? How do the words change? Practicing this builds range. It means you're not stuck in one emotional register and you can recognize surprise across all of them. The third exercise is the sequence listen. Surprise expressions very often come in sequences, several back-to-back, building in intensity or shifting in direction. No way! You're joking! Oh my God! How? 4 different expressions in a row, each one doing something slightly different. When you listen to English audio, pay attention not just to individual surprise expressions, but to sequences. What does the sequence tell you about how the surprise is developing in the speaker's mind? Is each expression adding to the previous one? Is the speaker moving from disbelief to curiosity? From shock to empathy? The sequence is itself a kind of emotional narrative. The 4th exercise is the understatement decoder. This one is specifically for the quiet end of the surprise spectrum. As you listen to English, particularly professional or British English, listen for understatement. That was unexpected. Bit of a surprise. I hadn't anticipated that. That's interesting. Each time you hear one of these understated expressions, try to decode the actual emotional intensity behind the small words. Context helps enormously. What just happened? How significant was it? The bigger the situation, the more weight the understatement carries. Train your ear to hear the weight beneath the small words. And the 5th exercise is the response practice. The next time someone expresses surprise in a conversation with you, practice the pause. Before you continue talking, give them a moment. Let the reaction settle. And then respond to the reaction, not just to the topic. I know. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. Does that surprise you? What are you thinking? These responses meet the person in their surprise rather than talking past it. And doing this consistently will change the quality of your emotional engagement in English conversations in a way that people notice and remember. Let's come back to Soren for the final scene. It's Saturday. He and Lena and a few others are at a small gathering at a friend's flat. There's music. There's food. There's the good noise of several overlapping conversations. And at one point, someone tells a story about something that happened recently. Something that's funny and weird and genuinely surprising. And as the person tells it, Soren watches the reactions around the room. He sees someone's eyes go wide. He sees another person's jaw drop slightly, and then they say, "No, seriously?" He hears Lena say, "Oh, that's amazing, I can't believe it," in her full voice, completely unrestrained. He sees Tom, across the room, raise one eyebrow very slightly and say, "Really?" in a tone that is perfectly flat, and yet somehow perfectly communicates that he finds this as bizarre as everyone else. He sees one person go completely silent for a moment, staring at the storyteller, before they finally say, "That is the wildest thing I've ever heard." And Soren catches all of it. Every expression, every scale, every register, every form. The loud and the quiet, the expressive and the restrained, the social and the instinctive. He catches it all, and he understands it all, and he is fully in the room in a way that he would not have been 6 months ago. He laughs at the right moments. He says, "I know, right?" to Lena, when she turns to him with, "Can you believe it?" He says, "Extraordinary" to Tom, with exactly the right tone, and Tom gives him a brief, amused look that says, "Yes, precisely." And the gathering continues, and the music plays, and people talk and laugh and react and express themselves in the full, vivid, emotionally alive English that real life is made of. And Soren is inside it. Not watching from the outside, not half a beat behind, not catching up. Inside it. Present, responsive. There. On the walk home later, he thinks about the journey, not just of this week, but of the last 6 months. The long, slow, patient work of learning to hear not just the content of English conversations, but the emotional texture of them. The surprise and the warmth and the doubt and the delight. The sounds that come before words, the pauses that carry more than speech, the understatement that holds more than the loud exclamation, the whole rich, layered, deeply human surface of real English, the part that happens in the voice and the body and the instinctive reaction, not just in the grammar and the vocabulary. And he thinks, this is what fluency actually feels like. Not the ability to produce correct sentences, the ability to be in the conversation, to feel it as it moves, to catch what's real and respond to it with something equally real. That's the thing. That's the whole thing. Let me bring everything together now, cleanly and fully, so you carry all of it with you. Today, we followed Soren through a week of learning to hear and understand surprise expressions in real English conversation. We met Lena, whose vivid, unrestrained expressiveness put the full vocabulary of surprise on display in the most accessible possible way. We met Tom, whose quiet, understated, carefully calibrated expressions showed Soren and us that the most powerful surprise is sometimes the most controlled. And we met Adriana, whose professional register taught Soren how emotional reactions function in workplace English, where the same real feeling gets expressed through a different filter. We covered 6 main families of surprise expressions in English. Disbelief expressions like "no way" and "you're joking." Magnitude expressions like "I can't believe it" and "that's extraordinary." Curiosity surprise expressions like "how is that possible?" and "what on earth happened?" Exclamatory bursts like "oh wow" and "whoa." Soft surprise expressions like "oh, really?" and "that's unexpected." And empathetic surprise expressions like "you must have been floored" and "that must have come out of nowhere." We talked about understatement as a form of surprise expression, how in restrained registers, the smaller the words, the bigger the feeling they're containing. We talked about silence as surprise. We talked about how sequences of surprise expressions build and evolve in real time, creating an emotional narrative that the careful listener can follow. And we gave you 5 exercises: surprise safari, register reading, the sequence listen, the understatement decoder, and response practice, to take everything you heard today into your real English listening life. Surprise is the moment when language and emotion meet at their most unguarded. When the careful, composed face of communication drops for just a second, and what comes out is pure, instinctive, human reaction. Learning to hear those moments, learning to catch them in their full variety and understand what each one means, is not just a language skill, it's a human skill. It's the skill of being present in the real, emotional, surprising, alive world of human conversation. If today's lesson gave you something, a new way of hearing emotional English, a new sense of the landscape of surprise, a new confidence that you can be in the room when things get real and fast and expressive, please share it. Share it with someone who has been half a beat behind in English conversations. Share it with someone who hears "no way" and "I can't believe it" and isn't quite sure what to do with them. Share it with anyone who wants to feel fully alive in English, not just correctly grammatical. English in Fluency is here for all of you, and we have so much more to explore together. Please subscribe so you're with us for every lesson that comes next. Every episode on this channel is made with real care for the real, full, emotionally rich English language, and we are nowhere close to finished. This is Alex from English in Fluency. Thank you for being here today, for staying with me all the way through, for being in it. I will see you in the next one. And until then, listen for the O. Feel the pause. Hear the weight in the understatement. And be in the room when the surprise arrives.